They promise security in an uncertain world, steady returns, protected futures, the American dream wrapped in financial wizardry. But beneath the polished pitches lurked a merciless illusion, devouring life savings, legacies, and lives. These are 10 true stories of ordinary trust turned to ashes by Ponzi schemes, where the greed of a few erased the futures of many. In the end, what remains isn't just loss. It's a haunting reminder that the greatest theft often wears the face of a friend. If you're already gripped by these tales of towering deception, hit that subscribe button for the crime o'clock, your front row seat to the shadows where fortune flips to fallout. And don't forget to like and turn on notifications so you never miss the next unraveling. Now, let's dive into the first mirage. Case 1. The Survivor's Fortune. Elie Wiesel's Fall to Fraud. In the shadow of unspeakable loss, one man rebuilt a life of quiet defiance, only to hand his legacy to a deceiver who promised eternity and delivered oblivion. Elie Wiesel was more than a name etched in history. He was a living testament to resilience, a voice that pierced the silence of atrocity. Born in 1928 in Siet, Romania, young Elie grew up in a world of Orthodox Jewish warmth, studying the Torah under his grandfather's watchful eye. But in 1944, at the age of 15, the Nazis shattered that world. Deported to Auschwitz, then Buchenwald, Wiesel endured the unimaginable. The smoke from crematoria, the skeletal forms of the dying, the hollow-eyed stare of his own father wasting away before liberation in 1945. He weighed just 80 pounds when Allied forces freed the camp, his faith fractured but not extinguished. Emerging from the ashes, Wiesel vowed to bear witness. He studied philosophy in Paris, penned essays under a pseudonym, and in 1958 published Night, a spare, searing memoir that laid bare the soul of the Holocaust. It sold modestly at first, but by the 1960s, as the world grappled with its complicity, Night became a cornerstone of human rights literature. In 1986, Wiesel's unyielding advocacy earned him the Nobel Peace Prize, a recognition not just of his words, but of his refusal to let evil fade into forgetfulness. With the prize came purpose amplified. In 1987, Wiesel founded the Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity, a beacon for dialogue on ethics, tolerance, and genocide prevention. Seated on its board was a constellation of luminaries, rabbis, scholars, philanthropists, who shared Wiesel's vision of mending a fractured world. Among them was Bernard L. Madoff, the silver-haired financier whose name evoked Wall Street's golden touch. Madoff, chairman of the Nasdaq in the 1990s, ran Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, a firm that catered to the elite with promises of steady, enviable returns, 10 to 12% annually, year after year, through a proprietary trading strategy shrouded in secrecy. To Wiesel, Madoff wasn't just a donor. He was a kindred spirit, a fellow survivor of sorts, having navigated the cutthroat currents of finance since the 1960s. Their bond deepened over shared causes. Madoff's contributions to Jewish charities, his presence at foundation galas, the quiet nods of mutual respect. By the mid-2000s, Wiesel entrusted the foundation's modest endowment, $15.2 million, painstakingly gathered from book royalties, speaking fees, and grants, to Madoff's care. It was a gesture of profound trust, the life savings of a man who had already lost everything once. Wiesel and his wife, Marion, poured their personal nest egg into the same vault, believing it secured not just their future, but the foundation's mission to amplify voices silenced by hatred. But beneath the veneer of reliability, cracks were forming, subtle at first, like fissures in a frozen lake. Madoff's returns were too consistent, defying market volatility with mechanical precision. Whispers circulated in financial circles. How did he do it? Auditors scratched their heads over feeder funds that funneled billions his way, yet his operation ran with just a handful of employees. Wiesel, immersed in lectures and UN panels, paid little heed. He was 80 now, his energy devoted to warning against the next Buchenwald, not scrutinizing balance sheets. The shift came abruptly on December 10, 2008, when Madoff confessed to his sons that his empire was one big lie, a Ponzi scheme of epic proportions, fabricating trades and statements to lure fresh capital while paying early investors with the influx. The next morning, federal agents stormed his Manhattan penthouse, arresting the 70-year-old icon in handcuffs that clattered like shattered illusions. The fallout rippled outward, $65 billion in promised assets evaporated, leaving 37,000 victims, pensioners, charities, families, in stunned disarray. For Wiesel, the revelation hit like a second deportation. The foundation's $15.2 million, nearly all its holdings gone. His and Marion's life savings evaporated. In a single night, the man who chronicled evil's machinery became its unwitting pawn. What investigators uncovered next would expose not just greed's mechanics, but its human toll. The SEC, long criticized for overlooking red flags waved by whistleblower Harry Markopolos as early as 1999, launched a frenzied probe. Raiding Madoff's offices, they sifted through servers humming with falsified records, bogus trade confirmations dating back decades, a labyrinth of offshore accounts to mask the void. Madoff's scheme had begun modestly in the 1970s, ballooning as his aura of invincibility drew blue-chip clients, hedge funds, banks, even the New York Mets. But suspicion had simmered for years. In 2005, a journalist's tip to regulators about impossible returns went unheeded. In 2008, as markets cratered, Madoff's facade held firm, until it couldn't. The FBI traced the web. $7.2 billion in actual securities, dwarfed by $58 billion in phantom gains. Victims like Wiesel emerged in filings, their statements a mosaic of betrayal. Wiesel, ever the witness, cooperated quietly, his foundation's ledgers a stark exhibit. As details leaked, how Madoff dined with elites while his scheme starved the vulnerable, public outrage swelled. Protests outside his trial decried a system that lionized wolves in sheep's clothing. For Wiesel, each disclosure deepened the wound. Madoff, once a bored confidant, had preyed on trust forged in shared humanitarian fires. The trial unfolded like a requiem for shattered faith, a federal courtroom in Manhattan transformed into a confessional. On March 12, 2009, Madoff, gaunt and unrepentant, pleaded guilty to 11 felony counts, securities fraud, money laundering, perjury, facing a maximum of 150 years. Prosecutors painted a portrait of calculated predation. Madoff is the architect of the largest Ponzi in history, siphoning lives while golfing in Palm Beach. Victims took the stand, their voices a chorus of ruin, retirees facing eviction, foundations shuttering programs. Wiesel did not testify, but his shadow loomed. His foundation's loss symbolized the moral rot. In court, Madoff offered no defense, only a monotone admission. I knew what I was doing was wrong. Sentencing came on June 29, 2009. The hammer fell with 150 years, effectively life, for the 71-year-old. Judge Denny Chin called it extraordinarily evil, a deliberate assault on the vulnerable. Madoff shuffled to Butner Federal Prison, his fortune seized, his family fractured, sons investigated, wife stripped of assets. Revelations cascaded, feeder funds complicit, regulators asleep. Wiesel watched from afar, his silence heavier than words. The guilty plea brought no catharsis, only the cold arithmetic of loss, $15.2 million irrecoverable, personal savings a void. In the quiet aftermath, Wiesel turned inward, his foundation a phoenix rising from fiscal ashes. With $250,000 in emergency funds and a surge of public donations, $500,000 in weeks, the group persevered, hosting seminars on ethics amid crisis. Wiesel resumed his peripatetic life, speeches at Yad Vashem, columns decrying Darfur's agonies. Yet the betrayal lingered, a scar on his psyche. In a 2009 interview, he likened it to Auschwitz's second death. We discovered all of a sudden that the people we trusted most were not what they seemed. He confronted Madoff at a forum, eyes locked in unspoken accusation, declaring, I cannot forgive you. Madoff, unbowed, mumbled of remorse, but Wiesel saw through it, the same detachment that enabled gas chambers. The loss forced reinvention, the foundation scaled back. Wiesel penned reflections on greed's banality, echoing Hannah Arendt's banality of evil. Marion, his anchor through deportations and Nobel nights, stood resolute, their marriage a bulwark against despair. Wiesel died in 2016 at 87, his final years marked by quiet philanthropy, but the Madoff wound never fully healed. It underscored a frailty in the human soul. Survival breeds vigilance, yet trust remains our Achilles heel. In a world rebuilt on testimony, one fraudster's lie reminded us that evil often arrives not in stormtroopers' boots, but in bespoke suits and boardroom handshakes. Power unchecked corrupts not just fortunes, but the very faith that rebuilds them. He survived the death camps, only to learn that some betrayals cut deeper than barbed wire. Case 2. Hollywood's Hidden Heartbreak. Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick's silent loss. Spotlights and silver screens painted their lives in gold, yet in the quiet hours off camera, a trusted hand slipped away with the very foundation of their fairy tale, leaving whispers of what if. Kevin Bacon and Kyra Sedgwick weren't just Hollywood royalty. They were the rare pair who made stardom feel attainable, a blend of grit and grace that spanned decades. Bacon burst onto the scene in 1978 with Animal House, his boyish charm evolving into brooding intensity in Footloose, 1984, where he danced rebellion into America's heart. By the 1990s, he was the chameleon of cinema, villain in JFK, survivor in Apollo 13, haunted everyman in Mystic River. Sedgwick, his partner in every sense, matched his fire with her own, a Tony-nominated stage actress who ignited screens in Born on the 4th of July and later anchored The Closer as the unflappable deputy chief, Brenda Lee Johnson. They met in 1987 on the set of Lemon Sky, a raw off-Broadway production that mirrored their unscripted romance. 9 months later, they wed in a Manhattan courthouse, defying Tinseltown's divorce stats with a vow to keep it real. Their union birthed 2 children, Susie, a rising actress echoing her parents' path, and Travis, the quiet anchor, and sprawling farm in Connecticut, where they raised chickens, tended gardens, and hosted barbecues far from paparazzi glare. Financially, they were prudent stars. Bacon's 6 degrees of connection quip masked a savvy investor's mind, while Sedgwick's Emmy-winning run padded their portfolio. By the 2000s, their nest egg, estimated at $50 million, fueled dreams beyond reels, philanthropy for arts education, quiet real estate flips, a life buffered against industry's volatility. Enter Joel Green, their trusted business manager since the 90s, a bespectacled fixture at family holidays, advisor on everything from tax shelters to charitable trusts. Green wasn't flashy. He was the steady hand, steering their wealth into low-risk havens that promised quiet growth. In 2004, he introduced them to the allure of structured notes tied to Bernard Madoff's firm, vehicles supposedly backed by steady treasury yields, immune to market whims. Bacon and Sedgwick, leery of Hollywood's boom-bust, bought in $30 million over years, a chunk of their security blanket woven into Madoff's web. The unraveling began not with fanfare, but with a phone call that shattered a lazy December morning. It was December 11th, 2008, and the Bacons were hunkered in their Connecticut haven, dodging holiday bustle. Green's voice cracked through the line. Madoff was done arrested, his $65 billion empire exposed as the mother of all Ponzi's. The couple's investment, funneled through Green's now-tainted firm, had vanished into ether, $30 million, poof, like a bad cut from the editing room. What had seemed a fortress against fame's fickleness was built on sand. Madoff's split-strike conversion strategy, a myth of options and equities that never traded, just fabricated statements to feed the illusion. Green, it turned out, hadn't just advised. He'd been a feeder, channeling client funds into Madoff's maw for fat commissions, blind to, or ignoring, the red flags, returns too perfect, audits too lax. For the Bacons, the fall was visceral. That night, over a fire-lit dinner cut short, Kyra's eyes welled as she tallied the void. College funds halved, retirement whispers silenced, the farm's mortgage suddenly a specter. Kevin paced the kitchen, his footloose footwork traded for futile calls to lawyers. The man who'd connected stars now grappling with disconnection from his own stability. Behind the betrayal lurked a deeper fracture. Green, family friend, godfather to their niece, had dined at their table while his choices eroded its legs. As news broke globally, the Bacons retreated, their loss one thread in Madoff's tapestry of 37,000 victims. But in their world, it wasn't abstract. It was the dream deferred, the security they'd clawed from unpredictable paychecks, now clawed back by greed. Investigators moved like shadows in a thriller the Bacons could never script, peeling layers from a facade that had fooled the sharpest eyes. The FBI's net widened from Madoff's triplex raid, sifting digital ghosts, servers spitting out 17,000 fake accounts, ledgers of lies spanning 4 decades. Green's role surfaced in the churn. His Beverly Hills firm, Ascendant Capital, had parked $100 million of celebrity cash with Madoff. drawn by the financier's NASDAQ pedigree and charity schmoozing. Whispers from whistleblowers like Harry Markopolos, who'd flagged the math's impossibility in 2000, fueled the frenzy. How could Madoff post gains in down markets when his black box model claimed no shorting? SEC emails revealed ignored warnings. A 2006 probe dropped after Madoff's charm offensive. For the Bacons, the probe hit home when Green's offices were subpoenaed. His computers carted off like props from a heist film. They sat for interviews, voices steady but edged with disbelief, detailing wire transfers and rosy reports that masked the Ponzi's hunger. As the web expanded, accomplices tumbled, feeder managers indicted, banks fined for blind facilitation. A pivotal break came in early 2009. Recovered hard drives exposing Green's emails, casual nods to Bernie's magic amid client reassurances. The Bacons learned their funds weren't isolated. They mingled with losses from Hadassah Hospital to Elie Wiesel's foundation, a collective hemorrhage. Tension mounted in congressional hearings, where Madoff's brother confessed complicity, and victim stories, including hints of Hollywood's hit list, stoked public fury. For Kevin and Kyra, each leak was a gut punch, not just money, but the trust in Green's avuncular grin, now dissected in depositions. What started as a personal gutting swelled into systemic indictment, curiosity peaking as the gavel loomed, would justice claw back even a fraction from the abyss. The courtroom became a coliseum of quiet reckonings, where Hollywood's gloss met the grind of accountability. Madoff's March 2009 guilty plea set the stage, but Green's drama unfolded in tandem. A Los Angeles federal court, fall 2010, where the manager faced securities fraud charges for steering $215 million into the scam, pocketing $11 million in fees. Prosecutors eviscerated him. He sold security to the insecure, flashing emails where Green dismissed doubts as paranoia. The Bacons didn't testify, privacy their shield, but their $30 million loss anchored the victim impact, a silent scream in filings. Witnesses piled on, accountants admitting oversight blindness, clients recounting ruined retirements. Green, once dapper, slumped in khakis, his defense a feeble, "I trusted Bernie too." The jury, unmoved, convicted on all counts in days. Sentencing hammered home. 10 years, $24 million in restitution ordered, though the well was dry. Madoff, already entombed in 150-year irons, watched peripherally as his empire's tentacles writhed. Revelations shocked. Green's firm had flagged Madoff risks internally in 2007, yet doubled down for commissions. For the Bacons, the verdicts brought no cheers, only the hollow math of recovery suits, where clawbacks from other victims might yield pennies. As appeals dragged, the couple absorbed the blows. Their loss a footnote in headlines, but a chapter in their ledger. Justice, it seemed, moved at bureaucratic pace, exposing not just fraud's architects, but the enablers who paved their path. In the years that followed, the Bacons rebuilt with the stubborn poetry of survivors, their farm a sanctuary where loss fermented into lessons. Publicly, they stayed mum, no tell-all, no blame game, just subtle nods in interviews, Kevin quipping in 2011, "We're fine. Life's too short for what-ifs." Privately, the hit reshaped them. Budgets tightened, investments diversified into tangibles, land, art, bonds vetted by new advisors. Sosie and Travis, buffered by parents' poise, pursued dreams undimmed, though family talks now laced with cautionary tales. Philanthropy persisted, channeled into smaller, trusted causes like Bacon's theater initiatives for at-risk youth. Kyra's the closer finale, in 2012 funded Fresh Starts, her portrayal of a truth-seeker mirroring their off-screen quest for closure. The Madoff saga's echoes, suicides among victims, a $4 billion recovery fund doled in drips, haunted headlines, but the Bacons chose forward motion, collaborating on films like the following, where Bacon chased shadows on screen while outrunning them in life. Reflection came in quiet moments. Greed's allure preys on the prudent, turning allies into adversaries. Their story whispers a truth about fame's fragility. Fortune, like love, demands vigilance, lest a single slip unravels the real. In Hollywood's Hall of Mirrors, they emerged not broken, but burnished, a testament that resilience isn't plot armor, but the quiet choice to dance on after the music stops. They danced through fame's frenzy, yet one false step in the dark stole the rhythm of their tomorrow. If cases like this fascinate you, subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, where every mystery has a ticking timeline waiting to be uncovered. Case 3. The Animation Empire's Shadow. Jeffrey Katzenberg's 20 Million Nightmare. He built dreams that enchanted the world, ogres with hearts of gold, lions reclaiming thrones. Yet one misplaced bet turned his fairy tale fortune into a goblin's feast, stripping the magic from his meticulously crafted empire. Jeffrey Katzenberg was the wizard behind the curtain of modern animation, a visionary whose ink and celluloid reshaped entertainment's skyline. Born in 1950 to a prosperous New York Jewish family, young Jeff cut his teeth in the mailroom of Paramount Pictures, his relentless drive propelling him from coffee runs to executive suites by his 20s. By 1984, he descended to chairman of the Walt Disney Studios, igniting a renaissance. The Little Mermaid swam into box office billions, Beauty and the Beast redefined romance, and The Lion King roared to cultural dominance. But ego clashed with empire. Katzenberg's infamous 1994 memo decrying synergy as bullshit led to his ouster, a bitter divorce from the Mouse House that minted him a Hollywood pariah overnight. Undeterred, he co-founded DreamWorks SKG in 1994 with Steven Spielberg and David Geffen, a $33 million startup that birthed Ants, Chicken Run, and the green-skin phenomenon Shrek in 2001, a $484 million smash that mocked fairy tales while padding pockets. DreamWorks grew into an animation juggernaut, selling to Paramount for $1.6 billion in 2005, netting Katzenberg $200 million personally. Post-sale, he pivoted to digital frontiers, launching DreamWorks Animation and investing in YouTube's early days, his fortune swelling to $1.1 billion by Forbes' count. Philanthropy burnished his legacy, co-chairing the Motion Picture Television Fund, bankrolling autism research through family ties, his son Andy's diagnosis fueling quiet generosity. Katzenberg lived large but calculated, a Malibu mansion, a vineyard estate, art collections rivaling museums. His financial steward? A cadre of elite advisors, including ties to hedge funds promising stability amid Tinseltown's tempests. In 2005, whispers of a guaranteed 12 return led him to allocate $20 million into structured products linked to Bernard Madoff's firm, vehicles touted as treasury-anchored shields against volatility. To Katzenberg, it was prudent diversification, a moat around the castle he'd built from storyboard sketches. The castle cracked on a crisp December dawn in 2008, when the fairy dust settled into ash. Katzenberg was in a board meeting at DreamWorks Animation, dissecting Kung Fu Panda's sequel prospects, when his phone buzzed with the unthinkable. Madoff, the Wall Street sage whose steady gains had lured titans, was a fraud. $65 billion in vapor, the largest Ponzi scheme ever unearthed. The mogul's $20 million stake, parked through a feeder fund, dissolved like a poorly rendered CGI render. What had masqueraded as a bulwark, monthly statements showing unwavering appreciation, revealed itself as smoke. Madoff's strategy of equity collars and SP hedges never executed, just illusory trades to sustain the pyramid. For Katzenberg, the fall was a gut-wrenching echo of his Disney dismissal, but crueler. No boardroom battle, just betrayal by a system he'd mastered. He retreated to his office, blinds drawn, as aides fielded panic calls from co-investors. The loss wasn't ruinous, his wealth endured, but it gnawed at the edges. Planned expansions for DreamWorks stalled, personal pledges to charities trimmed, the buffer against Hollywood's next quake eroded. Behind the mogul's steely facade, something primal stirred. Humiliation. The boy from Paramount's mailroom reduced to another Madoff mark, his acumen questioned in insider whispers. As global markets hemorrhaged in tandem, Katzenberg's mind raced. How had the man who greenlit Shrek's subversion missed this plot twist? The crime's machinery hummed on, devouring not just dollars, but the invincibility that had scripted his rise. Behind the glamour, investigators dismantled the deceit with the precision of a frame-by-frame analysis, each revelation a cut deeper into the scam's core. The FBI's December 2008 raid on Madoff's 17th floor perch yielded a digital Pandora's box, terabytes of fabricated confirmations, a Rolodex of elites, including Katzenberg's feeder links. Probe zeroed in on the mass mockery, Markopoulos's 2005 SEC submission, detailing 29 red flags, like weekend trade executions, gathered dust until the crash forced action. Katzenberg's involvement surfaced in early 2009 filings. His $20 million flowed via Optimal Strategic U.S. Equity, a Tremont fund that blind trusted Madoff, with 3.1 billion total. Subpoenas flew to feeder managers, their emails a trail of avarice. Bernie's returns are too good to question. Tension escalated in spring congressional hearings, where SEC Chair Christopher Cox admitted stunning lapses, victims' tales amplifying the outrage. For Katzenberg, the dragnet hit close. His fund's auditors, Freeling Horowitz, indicted for rubber-stamping audits with one-man sham reviews. He cooperated from afar, providing ledgers that illuminated the pyramid's tilt, new money from Hollywood hopefuls propping payouts to veterans like him. A breakthrough came mid-2009. Recovered Madoff notebooks, sketching client hierarchies, Katzenberg's name amid a who's who of wealth. As accomplices flipped, Peter Madoff pleading guilty. Feeder execs spilling for leniency. The pursuit built to fever pitch. Whispers of suicide pacts among victims added grim urgency, curiosity peaking. Could the feds untangle this Gordian knot, or would justice dissolve like the Gaines? The trial's curtain rose in a Manhattan courtroom heavy with unmet expectations. A spectacle where animation's dreamer confronted finance's phantom. Madoff's swift March 2009 guilty plea. 11 counts, no trial, shifted focus to satellites. But the core sentencing in June drew Katzenberg's silent vigil via proxy. Judge Denny Chin, I. Steely, branded the scheme staggeringly despicable. Slamming 150 years as Madoff stood impassive, his fraud a nuclear winter for innocence. Victim statements echoed, foundations folding, dreams deferred. Katzenberg's loss, though not voiced, bolstered the narrative, a titan humbled. His feeder funds collapse a domino in the cascade. Revelation stunned, Madoff's family complicity. His son's suicide in 2010 a tragic coda. Feeder trials followed. Optimal's managers convicted in 2013. Restitution battles yielding slim recoveries. For Katzenberg, the gavel's echo was bittersweet. A $2.2 billion victim fund clawed back fractions. His slice a meager $1.4 million by 2012. No personal testimony, but the mogul's shadow loomed in media. His silence a rebuke to the enablers who'd peddled safety to the savvy. Justice, procedural and protracted, exposed the rot. Regulators' naps, auditors' avarice. A system where genius like Madoff's masked monstrosity. The consequences rippled. Fines for banks like J.P. Morgan, who settled for $920 million, affirming that no vault was unbreachable. In the coda, Katzenberg scripted a comeback laced with wary wisdom, his empire adapting like a sequel with sharper edges. DreamWorks thrived. How to Train Your Dragon soaring to billions, but the scar informed every pitch. Diversification deepened, advisors triple vetted, philanthropy funneled through ironclad channels. He poured renewed vigor into causes, the MPTF's 100 million campaigns, autism initiatives untouched by the void. Personally, the hit tempered his fire. Fewer risks, more mentorship, his 2013 Obama fundraiser gig and nod to Influence Reborn. Reflection surfaced in rare candor. A 2010 panel admission. I thought I was smarter than that. A mogul's mea culpa underscoring hubris's toll. The Madoff ghost lingered in industry lore, a cautionary reel for boardrooms, reminding that even architects of joy court shadows. Katzenberg's tale illuminates a human constant. Innovation invites imitation, and in finance's fairy glen, the ogre often hides in the advisor's grin. Power's pursuit, unchecked by doubt, devours the dreamers who dare to build. He conjured worlds of wonder, until one wizard's whisper turned his gold into fool's pyrite. Case 4. The actor's lesson in loss. John Malkovich faces the void. On stages and screens, he mastered the art of illusion, slipping into skins of villains and visionaries with effortless deceit. Yet the greatest performance of his life was believing a financier's facade, a role that cost him the quiet certainty he'd earned off script. John Malkovich was the enigma of American theater and film, a shapeshifter whose intensity simmered beneath a lanky, inscrutable frame, turning ordinary roles into profound interrogations of the soul. Born in 1953 in Christopher, Illinois, to a working-class family, his father a state conservationist, his mother a homemaker, he discovered drama as an escape from small-town ennui, enrolling at Illinois State University, where he honed a craft that prized precision over flash. By 1976, he'd co-founded Chicago's Steppenwolf Theater with peers like Gary Sinise, igniting the ensemble movement with raw, visceral productions of True West and American Buffalo. Hollywood beckoned in 1984 with Places in the Heart, earning an Oscar nod. But Malkovich thrived in the margins, the unhinged agent in the line of fire, the seductive Valmont in Dangerous Liaisons, the prophetic John Huston in The Rainmaker. His directorial foray, The Killing Fields producer credit, and fashion line. His signature shirts a quirky sideline, painted a polymath unbound by type. Off-screen, he was the intellectual nomad, fluent in French, residing in a Cambridge, Massachusetts home with partner Nicole Kidman in the 90s before settling with designer Sandy Garcia, fathering 2 children amid a life of voracious reading and equestrian pursuits. Financially astute yet unostentatious, Malkovich's career yielded a $35 million net worth by the 2000s, diversified into production companies and real estate. His trusted circle included elite money managers, one of whom, in 2003, steered him toward a pristine investment vehicle, $2 million into a Fairfield Greenwich Group fund, a gateway to Bernard Madoff's ostensibly unassailable returns. To Malkovich, it was a footnote, a hedge for his family's future, buffered by the financier's reputation as a market oracle. The footnotes became a chasm on that fateful December morning in 2008, when the curtain fell on Madoff's masquerade with a thud that echoed through elite enclaves. Malkovich was in pre-production for an indie film in Europe, sketching character arcs over espresso, when a frantic email from his advisor pierced the reverie. Madoff arrested, his $65 billion colossus revealed as a house of cards, propped by incoming cash to mimic prosperity. The actor's $2 million infusion, siphoned through Fairfield's elite portals, had multiplied on paper into illusory gains, now null, a spectral sum in bankruptcy ledgers. The crime's elegance lay in its banality. Madoff's fabricated splits between SP buys and options hedges, audited by a complicit accountant, ensnared sophisticates like Malkovich who prized discretion over due diligence. For the performer accustomed to scripted betrayals, this was improvisation gone awry. No rehearsal, just the raw ache of exposure. He wired funds incrementally from 2003 to 2007, each deposit a vote of confidence in steady 10 to 12 yields amid dot-com scars. The fall cascaded personally. Planned expansions for his fashion atelier curtailed, educational trusts for his children, a boy and girl navigating adolescence, suddenly threadbare, the Cambridge nest egg cracked. Malkovich, ever the stoic, absorbed it in solitude, his mind a whirlwind of what-ifs. Had his artist's intuition, so keen for fictional frauds, dulled to real-world wolves? As tabloids tittered at another celeb casualty, the loss transcended ledgers. It eroded the autonomy he'd scripted so meticulously, forcing a reevaluation of trust in an industry rife with smoke and mirrors. What surfaced in the investigative fog would script a thriller of institutional somnambulism, each clue a prop illuminating finance's underbelly. Federal agents, swarming Madoff's Midtown lair post-arrest, unearthed a vault of virtual vapor, 4,000 client files of phantom portfolios, trade logs defying arithmetic, gains in bear markets, outsized volumes on holidays. Malkovich's thread tugged through Fairfield Greenwich, the $14.5 billion feeder whose due diligence was a farce, pocketing $47 million in fees, while ignoring Markopoulos's 2008 alarm bells. Subpoenas cascaded to the Greenwich office in 2009, yielding emails of executives dismissing anomalies as Bernie's genius. Tension coiled as the SEC's Inspector General report dropped in September 2009, lambasting 8 years of ignored tips, a 1999 anonymous note, a 2003 journalist dossier, blaming hubris over horror. For Malkovich, the probe intruded via questionnaires, his modest stake a speck in the $36 billion Fairfield hemorrhage, yet emblematic. How a theater vet, versed in narrative arcs, missed the plot's Ponzi pivot. Pivotal leaks in 2010, whistleblower depositions detailing Madoff's family inner circle, his niece's warnings unheeded, escalated the hunt, curiosity surging with each indictment. Banks like HSBC, laundering $8 billion through Madoff, faced scrutiny, their complicity a web ensnaring unwitting threads like Malkovich's. As congressional spotlights grilled regulators, the actor pondered from afar. Was this chaos a soliloquy on greed, or just another bad act in capitalism's endless rehearsal? The denouement played out in courtrooms that felt like soundstages for reckoning, where verdicts cut deeper than any director's note. Madoff's confessional plea in March 2009 paved the way, but Fairfield saga ignited in a 2011 Manhattan civil suit, where investors, including Malkovich's proxies, sued for $2.2 billion in negligence. Prosecutors eviscerated the firm's willful blindness, parading internal memos, scoffing at audits. No criminal trial for top brass. Settlements swallowed the sting, but the 2013 ruling slapped Greenwich with $227 million in payouts, a fraction doled via the Irving Picard Trustees Clawback Odyssey. Madoff's June 2009 sentencing, 150 years under Judge Chin's gavel. A wolf in sheep's clothing, resonated as archetype. Victims' letters, Malkovich silent among them. A litany of lives upended. Shocks reverberated. Feeder audits exposed as shams. Madoff suicide in 2021 a final bow. For the actor, consequences crystallized in 2012 distributions. 680,000 recouped. A 34 salvage from the void. Yet the true toll was intangible. Legal fees nibbling residuals. A wariness seeding future deals. Justice's machinery ground on. Finding enablers like J.P. Morgan, $920 million in 2020, affirming no soliloquy goes unpunished. Malkovich, observer to the end, absorbed the spectacle. Performance demands vulnerability, but finances stage Brooks no encores for the duped. In the epilogue, Malkovich emerged as the method actor of adversity, channeling loss into layered authenticity that enriched his craft and carriage. He returned to Steppenwolf stages in 2010 with The Dance of Death, his Strindbergian bite sharper, as if auditioning catharsis through Ibsen's Ghosts. Films followed, Red 2, Burning Woman, his 2 million scar a subtle prop, fueling roles of quiet unraveling. Family anchored him. Garcia's designs bloomed anew. Children shielded yet schooled in skepticism. Their Cambridge hearth a bulwark rebuilt brick by wary brick. Philanthropy persisted. Arts grants, literacy pushes. Now vetted with forensic zeal, his net worth rebounding to $40 million by disciplined diversification. Reflection distilled in a 2014 interview, laconic as ever. You learn that certainty is the real fiction. The Madoff mirage mirrored his métier. Illusion's allure, trust's tightrope, the void where characters and fortunes confront their emptiness. Malkovich's Odyssey whispers of art's parallel to avarice. Both seduce with sleight, but only vigilance script survival. In the footlights of fortune, he taught that the deepest roles demand not just empathy, but an unblinking eye for the exit. He embodied deception's dance until a silent swindle stepped on the toes of his tomorrow. Case 5. The Broadcaster's Blind Spot. Larry King's 700,000 betrayal. He grilled the mighty with unflinching gaze, coaxing truths from the tangled tongues of power. Yet when a pal's pitch promised easy wealth, the interrogator became the interrogated, his empire's edge dulled by dollars that never were. Larry King was the everman's oracle, a microphone maestro whose suspenders and Brooklyn bark made 6 decades of broadcasting feel like a fireside chat with the world's pulse. Born Lawrence Harvey Zeiger in 1933 to Russian Jewish immigrants in Depression-scarred Brooklyn, he peddled soda on Coney Island boardwalks before fate flipped the script. A 1957 radio gig in Miami renamed him King, and by the 1970s, he'd conquered airwaves. Mutual Broadcasting's all-night talker, where he bantered with Bobby Kennedy hours before the assassination, his voice a vessel for unfiltered America. CNN scooped him in 1985 for Larry King Live, a 25-year juggernaut that drew 1.3 million nightly viewers. Presidents from Reagan to Obama, crooks like Mike Tyson, crooners like Sinatra, all disarmed by his cigar-chomping curiosity. Off mic, King was the resilient romantic. 8 marriages, including a 1997 renewal with 7th wife Shawn Southwick, fathering 2 boys amid a brood from prior unions. His 100 million empire spanned books, My Remarkable Journey, a short-lived reality show, even a 2007 heart transplant that barely paused his patter. Financially, he was the street-smart saver. Real estate in L.A., Vegas condos, a nest egg buffered against broadcasting's flux. But trust was his Achilles. Friends like Irwin Z. Hoff, a fellow survivor of Miami's hustles, whispered tips over pastrami. In the early 2000s, Hoff touted a can't-miss fund via Bernard Madoff. Steady splits on treasuries, low drama. King bit. For million wired in over years, withdrawals padding the pot. A safety net for Shawn and Sons Chance and Cannon, then toddlers chasing his spotlight. The net tore on December 11, 2008, mid-broadcast from CNN's Atlanta bunker, when a producer's urgent whisper halted King's monologue on celebrity scandals. Madoff, the market whisperer whose 10 to 12 yields laughed at recessions, was cuffed. His $65 billion kingdom a Ponzi palace of pilfered promises, paying old birds with new pigeons' feathers. King's stake? He'd pulled $3.3 million in gains, but the principal's $4 million core vanished, netting a $700,000 crater in his ledger. The crime's cruel poetry, Madoff's ghost trades, SP straddles that existed only on doctored PDFs, had fed King's complacency. Each quarterly statement a siren song lulling the skeptic. For the man who'd skewered Watergate enablers, this was vertigo. No adversarial edit, just the slow bleed of blind faith and a friend's nod. He signed off early that night, suspenders sagging, retreating to his hotel to phone Sean. The boys' trusts trimmed, Vegas digs deeds dicey, the transplant bills shadow lengthening. Hoff, the tipster, was collateral, his own Madoff ties exposed, their bond frayed like a bad connection. As headlines howled Hollywood's hit list, King's loss pierced deeper, not penury, but the irony of a truth-seeker snared by fiction. His golden years glowed dimmed by deceit he couldn't cross-examine. Investigators scripted a procedural as gripping as King's best gotchas, unspooling the scam seams with forensic finesse that would make Watergate weep. The FBI's dawn raid on Madoff's Park Avenue perch yielded a confessional cornucopia, servers groaning under 10,000 bogus blotters, of family cabal's calendars charting the con's cadence since the 70s. King's filament flickered in the fray via Hoff's feeder, the Access International Fund that shoveled $500 million to Madoff, fees fattening palms, while flags flew ignored. SEC retrospectives in 2009 scorched the soil. 29 Markopolos missives from 2000 onward, decrying dividend delusions and audit voids, dismissed as doomsaying. Tension tautened with subpoena storms, to Hoff's docs in early 2009, unearthing emails of effusive endorsements, Bernie's bulletproof, sent to King amid his CNN crunch. Congressional caucuses crackled, victims' vignettes, King's a murmur in memos, fueling fury at the Fed's fumbles. A linchpin landed in 2010, Madoff's deputy's diary, detailing client churn, where King's pulls propped phantoms. As banks buckled under billions in back-channel bucks, curiosity crested. Would the worm turn on enablers like Hoff, or slither free? For King, each dispatch was a delayed cue, his interrogator's instinct, honed on Hoff's hunches, now hindsight's harsh director's cut. The verdict's venue was a vault of vindication, court chambers crackling with the catharsis King chased nightly. Madoff's March 2009 mea culpa, guilty on 11 felonies, no trials theater, heralded the hubbub. But Hoff's ripple rocked a 2011 SEC skirmish, negligence nods netting $2 million fines for access brass, their fiduciary fail a foil to King's faith. Madoff's June sentencing slammed 150 years, Judge Chin's cadence cutting. You stole from the most vulnerable. As King watched reruns, his $700,000 a silent sidebar in impact briefs. Stunner stacked. Hoff's immunity flip, spilling feeder frailties. Madoff King's convictions. Peter's 2-year bid a familial footnote. Clawbacks clawed King's corner. 200,000 salvaged by 2013 from a $13 billion pot. But the toll tallied steeper. Audits eating airtime residuals. Sean's stress shadowing their vows. Justice's jury-rigged reel rolled on. J.P. Morgan's $920 million 2020 gouge a group grovel, underscoring no green room for grifters. King, ringside in reverie, reckoned to reckoning, probing power's perks, but personal pitches pierced perilously. In the fade-out, King reframed the fiasco with the resilience that reran his run, his voice a vestige of vigor undimmed by voids. Larry King lived limp to 2010's close, but syndication surged, HuffPost gigs, podcasts probing Putin, his 700,000 gouge goosed by grit, net worth rebounding to $50 million via books and cameos. Sean and Sons, schooled in the sting, thrived. Chance DJing dreams, Canon emceeing echoes of Dad's drawl. Philanthropy pivoted. Heart health hubs, now hedged with hawkish hires. His 2017 lung cancer skirmish, a sequel he scripted sans shortcuts. Reflection rippled in a 2011 confab. I trusted a friend. Lesson learned. Vet the vibe. The Madoff maze mirrored his métier. Questions quarries, but unchecked chums chart chasms. King's chronicle cautions the conversationalist. Eloquence evades entrapment, yet avarice ambushes the affable, turning talk's titan to testament. In broadcasting's boundless blue, he beamed that scrutiny saves, but solitude and suspicion sustains the spotlight. He voiced the world's whispers, until one unchecked echo emptied his echo chamber. Case 6. The Elder's Empty Nest. Eileen Kent's Parents and the Clawback Curse. In the golden hush of retirement, they dreamed of sunsets and grandchildren's laughter, until a financier's phantom riches turned their nest egg to dust, and the law's long arm demanded they repay the very illusions they'd clung to for solace. Eileen Kent's parents, Harold and Miriam, were the epitome of mid-century American tenacity, a couple whose quiet triumphs wove the fabric of suburban stability. Harold, born in 1925 in the Bronx to Polish immigrants, dodged the Great Depression's bite by delivering papers at dawn, his calloused hands later gripping rivets as a construction foreman in post-war Queens. Miriam, a year younger, grew up in the same tenements, her nimble fingers sewing hems in garment factories before marriage in 1947 tethered her to homemaking and Harold's rising fortunes. They built a life brick by sturdy brick, a modest split level in Forest Hills by 1955, Eileen arriving in 1950 as their only child, followed by summers at Coney Island and Hanukkah suppers rich with lax. Harold's promotions funded a nest egg, $500,000 by the 1980s, socked into CDs and bonds, a bulwark against the volatility that had scarred their youth. Retirement beckoned in 1990, Harold at 65 hanging up his hard hat for golf at Fresh Meadow Country Club, Miriam volunteering at the JCC, her bridge circle a symphony of shared recipes. They doted on Eileen, a sharp-witted accountant in Manhattan, her visits laced with tales of audits and ambitions. Financially, they were conservatives, no stocks wild rides, just steady yields from a trusted advisor at a local firm, who in the late 1990s introduced them to enhanced opportunities, feeder funds promising 8 to 10 without the market's maw. By 2005, 1.2 million of their savings flowed into an ascendant capital vehicle, anchored to Bernard Madoff's reputed genius, a man whose Jewish philanthropy and NASDAQ throne evoked a kindred reliability. To Harold and Miriam, it was security amplified, withdrawals funding cruises to Alaska and Eileen's wedding in 2002, their golden years gilded by statements that bloomed like clockwork. The gilding flaked away on a snowy December afternoon in 2008, as Harold, 83 and arthritic, shuffled to the mailbox with Miriam's arm in his, expecting the usual bouquet of holiday cards. Instead, a terse letter from their advisor, Madoff exposed, the $65 billion mirage shattered, their $1.2 million infusion reduced to echoes in a bankruptcy void. What had seemed a perpetual spring, quarterly payouts propping their fixed income, unraveled as Ponzi threadbare. Madoff's trades a tapestry of forgeries, early birds fed by latecomers' unwitting largesse. For the Kents, the fall was a slow suffocation. Harold's hands trembled over the calculator, tallying the abyss. Social Security and pensions covered basics, but the extras, the club's dues, Miriam's pill bottles, Eileen's safety net evaporated. Miriam, ever the stoic, wept in the kitchen, her bridge ladies' calls turning to casseroles of pity. The crime's intimacy stung. Their advisor, a temple acquaintance, had vouched for Madoff over Seder wine, turning communal trust into communal theft. Eileen, fielding frantic calls from her office, drove out that night, her parents' faces etched with the terror of reversal, not just poverty's shadow, but the clawback specter, where profits withdrawn became debts owed. In their empty nest, now echoing with what-ifs, the betrayal wasn't abstract. It was the crew's money that bought false peace, now a noose of legal reckoning. Investigators pierced the veil with the doggedness of detectives in a family drama turned noir, each unearthed filament tightening the noose on the scam's architects. The FBI's blitz on Madoff's lair in December 2008 birthed a blizzard of data, petabytes of pseudonymous portfolios, client ledgers listing the Kents amid 37,000 souls. Their path traced to Ascendant, the $215 million funnel whose manager, Joel Green, skimmed fees while sidelining suspicions. SEC spotlights in 2009 scorched the oversight, whistleblower alerts from 2002 onward, detailing Madoff's audit anomalies, shelved in bureaucratic limbo. Tension simmered as subpoenas snared Green's files, emails revealing casual complacency. Bernie's batting 1.000, sent to retirees like the Kents. Congressional inquisitions amplified the pulse. Victim rosters, the Kents' modest, some a mosaic piece, igniting ire at regulators' reverie. A keystone cracked in 2010. Forensic accountants reconstructing outflows, pinpointing the Kents' $400,000 in gains as bait for clawbacks, demands to repay phantom profits to equitably divvy the dregs. For Eileen, mediating from her ledger's throne, each disclosure was a dagger. Her parents' thrift, once a virtue, now a vulnerability exploited. As feeder probes proliferated, indictments for fraud facilitation, curiosity crested on the brink of benches. Would the law's ledger balance mercy with math, or grind elders into its gears? The bar of justice bent under the weight of collective grievance. Courtrooms converted to coliseums, where the Kents' quiet claim joined a cacophony of cries. Madoff's March 2009 capitulation, guilty across 11 counts, cascaded to satellites. Green's 2010 Los Angeles indictment, approximate thunder. Securities fraud for blinded billions. His trial a tableau of avarice unmasked. Prosecutors paraded the Kents' archetype. Retirees ruined. Their statements a siren of stability, without summoning the frail duo. Eileen's affidavits their proxy voice. Green's defense crumbled under cross. I believed, he bleated, but jury saw avarice, convicting in a fortnight. Sentencing stung. 10 years, 24 million restitution, though the coffers coughed dust. Madoff's June gavel, 150 years, evil incarnate, reverberated as refrain. Clawback odysseys under trustee Irving Picard, ensnaring the Kents in 2011 suits. Repay $400,000 or face liens on their home. Revelations rent the air. Green's internal 2007 red flags ignored for commissions. Madoff's kin's quiet quits. For the family, consequences compounded. Legal labyrinths draining Eileen's savings. Harold's health fracturing under stress. A pacemaker in 2012. Justice's scales tipped toward equity. But at what elder's expense? The verdicts vindicated vigilance, yet exposed the system's snare. Recovery's promise a protracted purgatory. In the twilight's tender close, the Kents navigated the aftermath with the grit that had girded their youth, their empty nest refurnished by familial fortitude and faint fiscal flickers. Eileen orchestrated a GoFundMe whisper in 2012, $50,000 from Bridge Circle kin easing the clawback crush. By 2015, Picard's pot yielded $150,000 back, a 12 palliative. Harold, wheelchair-bound by 2013, found solace in grandkids' visits, Miriam's recipes rebounding at assisted living's hearth. They downsized to a co-op, golf traded for jigsaws, but the scar schooled, trusts retitled, advisors audited annually. Eileen's career crested in forensic accounting. Her parents plied a pivot to fraud watch seminars. Reflection ripened in Harold's final journal, penned shakily in 2016 before his passing at 91. We built to last, but learned late. Fortune's friends can fell the firmest. Miriam followed in 2019. Her last words a wry nod to cruises canceled. Their saga etches endurance's edge. Retirement's repose, fragile as fool's gold, demands distrust of dazzle. In avarice's autumn, the Kents' curse cautions that justice's harvest reaps not just the reaper, but the reaped, sowing seeds of skepticism in soil once sown with simple faith. They saved for sunsets, only to watch the law reclaim the glow they'd borrowed from shadows. Case 7. The broker's bitter irony. Joyce Greenberg's recovered regrets. She traded fortunes for a living, her ledger a ledger of lives entrusted. Yet when she bet her own on a fellow financier's flawless facade, the irony etched deeper than any balance sheet, turning her expertise into her undoing. Joyce Greenberg was the unsung sentinel of Wall Street's quieter corridors, a broker whose 4 decades in the fray honed a radar for risk that safeguarded clients through booms and busts. Born in 1948 in the bustling boroughs of Brooklyn, to a family of garment workers who scraped savings from sweatshop shifts, Joyce learned early the weight of a dollar, tutoring neighbors for nickels, her Brooklyn College finance degree in 1970 a ticket out of tenement toil. She cut her teeth at a midtown firm in the 70s, navigating oil shocks and stagflation, her no-nonsense poise earning promotions to senior advisor by the 80s. At Drexel Burnham Lambert, during junk bond frenzies, she steered high-net-worth families clear of Milken's mayhem, then pivoted to independent practice in 1990. founding Greenberg Financial in Manhattan's Garment District, a boutique haven for 200 clients, from widowed educators to budding entrepreneurs. Her mantra: preserve principal, grow gently, yielding portfolios that weathered 1987's crash and dot-com detonations. Personally, Joyce was the steadfast singleton, her two-bedroom co-op on the Upper West Side a sanctuary of jazz records and weekend hikes in the Palisades, her circle tight, sisters in Jersey, a book club dissecting the intelligent investor. By 2005, at 57, her own nest egg stood at $1.8 million, meticulous accruals from commissions and bonuses, earmarked for a Cape Cod cottage and elder care for her aging parents. Skeptical of hype, she diversified ruthlessly, but a peer's rave review of Bernard Madoff's split-strike serenity, consistent 11 sands volatility, tempted her professional curiosity. In 2006, she allocated $1.5 million through a feeder fund, a calculated concession to a colleague's clout, viewing it as a peer-reviewed safe harbor for her sunset years. The harbor hold on a blustery December weekday in 2008, as Joyce reviewed client recaps in her sunlit office overlooking Bryant Park, the autumn leaves a fleeting metaphor for fortune's fragility. A colleague's ashen call shattered the routine. Madoff and Irons, his $65 billion bastion unmasked as the granddaddy of Ponzi's, a pyramid of pilfered principal where payouts paraded as profits. Joyce's $1.5 million plunged into the pit. Statement sheet scanned with brokers I now confessed as confetti. Madoff's algorithmic alchemy exposed as arithmetic sleight. No collars on the SP, just cooked confirmations to court the conoscenti. For the woman who'd lectured on liquidity traps, the trap snapped personal. Her Cape dreams capsized, parents' buffers breached, the co-op's equity suddenly a precipice. She canceled afternoon meetings, blinds drawn against the city's indifferent hum, her mind a maelstrom of mortification. How had her honed skepticism surrendered to a salesman's sheen? The crime's calculus cut cruel. Madoff, Nasdaq's ex-kingpin, had harvested her trust like so many, his feeder funnels, including her conduit, ferrying funds for fees, while the facade fattened. In her ledger's lonely glow, the irony ignited, the guardian of others' gold, gored by her own gambit, the betrayal not just fiscal, but a fracture in her faith in the fraternity she'd faithfully served. What agents exhumed from the wreckage would forge a farce of fiduciary folly, each thread a taut line pulling Joyce deeper into the docket's drag. The FBI's festive season foray into Madoff's opulent digs disgorged a deluge. Digital diaries of deceit, 20,000 sham sheets scripting the saga since the 60s. Joyce's juncture jetted via Maxim Capital, the $500 million conduit whose stewards skimmed $20 million in slices, blind to, or burying, banshee warnings. SEC autopsies in 2009 autopsied the atrophy. Harry Markopoulos's 2005 screed on impossible splits, archived in oblivion alongside 2003's anonymous alarms. Probes proliferated, subpoenas snagging Joyce's feeder files in spring 2009, unspooling emails of executive exultation. Madoff's metrics mesmerize, dispatched to pros like her. Hill hearings hammered home, her stake a statistic in the $7 billion Maxim meltdown, stoking senators' scorn for the SEC siesta. A fulcrum flipped in late 2009, reconstructed remittances revealing Joyce's inflows as outflows for earlier birds, her gains a ghostly $300,000 earmarked for clawback crusade. For the broker, each bulletin was a balance beam wobble, her client's counsel now her curse, the investigation's inexorability interrogating her own oversight. As indictments inundated, feeders felled for facilitation. Intrigue intensified. Would the web's weavers weave their way out? Or would the widowmaker's widowhood widen? The tribunal's tableau turned Joyce's irony into indictment's ink, benches burdened by the breadth of the breach. Madoff's March 2009 genuflection, guilty gamut, trial truncated, triggered tendrils. Maxim's mandarins mustered in a 2012 Manhattan melee. Fraud and fiduciary breach for funneling fortunes into fog. Feds flaunted Joyce's profile, pro turned prey. Her affidavits a poignant prop, eschewing her stand. Her spreadsheets the star. Defense demurred. Market mystique. But barristers branded it bunkum, juries gnawed in weeks. Doom dropped. 8 years apiece. 100 million mulct, though the till trickled. Madoff's midsummer mauling, 150 years. Grotesque greed. Gonged as gospel, clawbacks commencing in 2010 under Picard's pickaxe. Joyce sued for her sliver, but stung by suits reclaiming her $300,000 windfall. Bombshells burst. Maxim's 2006 internal inquietudes ignored for incentives. Madoff's minions mea culpas. For Joyce, the fallout fermented, filings feasting on fees. Her practice pared to part-time. Parents' provisions pinched. Equity's engine exacted even from the earnest. Her recovery a ragged $450,000 by 2014. A third redeemed. The rest a regrets residue. Verdicts veiled vindication, yet unveiled the vice. Justice's juggernaut. Just for the juggernaut, not its jetsam. In the residue's rueful review, Joyce reforged her footing with the fortitude of one who'd flipped flops before. Her regrets a rubric for reinvention. She shuttered the solo shop in 2013, allying with a fiduciary firm for fractional freedom. Her client count cold but counsel candid. Due diligence isn't a degree, it's daily dread. The Cape Cottage crested in a condo compromise. Parents' passage eased by her scrimped solidarity till their 2015 sunsets. Book club banter birthed a blog, Brokers' Blind Spots, Dissecting Deceptions. Her posts a palliative for peers, netting adjunct gigs at Baruch. Reflection refined in a 2016 symposium soliloquy. I sold safety. Now I sell scrutiny. Irony's the interest on ignorance. The Madoff morass mirrored her métier. Trades tempt, but transparency tempers triumph. Joyce's journey jabs at the juggle. Expertise equips, yet ego eclipses. And in finance's fine print, the broker's bargain brooks no blind bids. Her reclaimed regrets remind that recovery's not redemption. It's the reckoning that reshapes the risk-taker into the resolute. She brokered others' bold bets, until her own irony balanced the books in blood-red ink. Case 8. The Daughter's Stolen Future. The Greenberg sisters' fractured inheritance. They inherited not just a legacy of love, but a ledger of losses, tuition dreams deferred, family ties tested, all because a father's fortune proved as fleeting as a father's final breath, clawed back by a system that prized parity over pity. The Greenberg sisters, Rachel, 28, and Leah, 25, were the bright sparks of a Brooklyn family forged in the fires of immigrant ambition, their lives a mosaic of milestones mapped by their parents' unyielding optimism. Their father, David Greenberg, a soft-spoken accountant born in 1942 to Holocaust survivors in Crown Heights, had clawed his way from ledger clerk to partner at a midtown firm, his green eyeshade days yielding a comfortable $800,000 nest egg by the 1990s, IRAs, 401k, a co-op in Midwood. Mother Esther, a former teacher with a laugh like wind chimes, balanced the books at home, her PTA presidency and Shabbat suppers the glue for their tight-knit trio. The girls bloomed in this nurture. Rachel, the elder, a poli-sci whiz at Barnard Law School, her weekends volunteering at legal aid clinics. Leah, the artist, sketching futures at Pratt Institute, her canvases alive with the vibrancy of Borough Park's bustling streets. David's financial forays were cautious, mutual funds, bonds, but in 1998, a client's murmur of Madoff's magic intrigued him. Steady 10 splits, no stomach-churning dips. By 2004, he'd funneled $600,000 into a feeder fund, withdrawals seating the sisters' 529 plans, Rachel's LSAT prep, Leah's studio fees. A paternal pledge that their horizons would stretch beyond his own. The family toasted these gains at Passover Seders, David's quiet pride in providing a buffer against the uncertainties that had shadowed his parents' escape from Warsaw. The pledge crumbled on a humid August evening in 2005, not with fanfare, but with the sterile beep of a hospital monitor, as David, 63, and felled by a silent heart attack, exhaled his last amid 4 drips and esters whispered to Hillam. The sisters, summoned from internships and ateliers, arrived to a vigil that blurred into bureaucracy. Probate papers, asset tallies, the co-op's deed. But the real requiem rang 6 months later, in December 2008, when Esther's advisor stammered through a call from the kitchen. Madoff's empire, that $65 billion behemoth of bespoke yields, exposed as ether. A Ponzi perpetuated by pyramid inflows, David's profits, mere mirages masking the maw. The inheritance, ballooned to $1.1 million on Dr. Dockets, imploded. Principal pilfered, the sisters' college coffers, $200,000 earmarked, evaporated like vapor. For Rachel and Leah, orphaned anew, the fall fractured fresh. Rachel deferred NYU law, slinging lattes to cover loans. Leah's paints gathered dust in a shared sublet, her grants gasping. Esther, 60 and adrift, sold heirlooms to stem the bleed. Her widow's weeds heavier with the weight of withdrawals, now weaponized, 150,000 in distributions, from 2005 to 2007. Flagged for clawback as the law decreed fairness in fiasco. The crime's calculus carved cruel. Madoff's feeder, a trooper fund funnel, had fed the frenzy. David's trust a thread in the tapestry of 37,000 torn. In the sisters' splintered siblinghood, the theft transcended treasure. It severed the sinew of security their father had sown, turning grief's geometry into a geometry of grudge. Delvers into the deceit drafted a detective yarn as intricate as David's old spreadsheets. Each datum a dart pinning the pretext. The FBI's Yuletide yoke on Madoff's manse unearthed an underworld. Gigabytes of ghostly grids, trade tallies tallying triumphs that time-traveled. The Greenbergs' graft groped through Trooper Global, the $1.2 billion bypass whose brokers banked $40 million in bonuses, batting away 2004's beta tests on bogus benchmarks. SEC sagas in 2009 savaged the slumber. Marco Polo's 2008 manifesto on mathematical madness, mothballed with 2001's early epithets. Summonses surged to Troopers' tomes in 2009's thaw, disgorging dispatches of denial. Madoff's model mystifies but pays, pitched to pros like David. Capital convocations crackled, the family's fragment of facet in the 9 billion trooper torrent, senators scorning the watchdog's wink. A cornerstone canted in 2010. Flow forensics fingering the Greenbergs' gains as grist for the grinder. 150,000 ripe for reclamation to ransom the ruined. For the sisters, each edict an elegy. Rachel's research into restitution, Leah's letters to legislators, their father's fiduciary faith, now fodder for the fray. As accessories avalanched, feeders fraught for fraud, the fascination flared. Would the web's wardens warp underweight, or would widows' woes widen the wound? The bar's ballet balanced bitterness with the bite of bylaw, tribunals teeming with the Greenberg ghosts. Madoff's March 2009 obeisance, omnibus offenses, no spectacle spawned spin-offs. Troopers Titans tried in a 2013 Connecticut caucus. Conspiracy and conversion for channeling chump change into chicanery. DA's dossiers draped the Greenbergs' dirge, daughters disinherited. Esther's exhibits their echo, bypassing the bench for briefs. Apologists averred avuncular advice, but advocates assailed avarice. Panels punt in phases. Hammer hovered. 5 years suspended. 50 million mulct, the kitty kaput. Madoff's June Jeremiah, 150 years. Cataclysmic calumny. Chimed as chorus, clawbacks churning in 2011 via Picard's plow. The Greenbergs garnished for their gleanings, liens lapping at Leah's lease. Jolts Jared. Troopers 2005 qualms quashed for quotas. Madoff's mates mea culpa. For the fold, the fallout festered, filings filching fees. Rachel's recess from Rhodes. Esther's exile to eldercare. Parody's pendulum pounded the penitent, their portion a paltry 180,000 by 2016. 16 salvaged. The scar a stipend's shadow. Adjudications affirmed atonement, but aired the affliction. Equity's edict, even-handed yet eviscerating, exacts from the echoes as keenly as the epicenter. In the heirloom's hushed harvest, the Greenbergs grafted grace from a gouge, their fractured future forged in fraternal fire. Esther, anchored by the girl's grit, volunteered at victim vigils by 2012, her bridge-to-bridge loans till the bounty brimmed. Rachel clinched Columbia Law in 2014 on scholarships sculpted from spite. Leah's loft lease locked by freelance flair. They rallied relatives for a restitution ritual, annual audits, a David's Due fund for fledgling artists, net worth nudged to normalcy. Reflection resurfaced in Leah's 2018 exhibit, canvases of cracked coffers captioned, "Inheritance isn't ink, it's the intent we ink anew." The Madoff morass mirrored their matriline, loss lacerates, but lineage laminates, and in Legacy's ledger, the sisters' saga spotlights stewardship sting. Fortune's flux flays the faithful, but fortitude fathoms the fracture. Their tale tolls the truth. Theft's tendrils tangle the tender, yet from the tangle, tenacity threads a tapestry tougher than the torn. They stood to inherit the stars, until a father's phantom fortune pulled them back to earth. Case 9. The Testifier's Torn World. Martha Blanchett's Stanford Scars. She took the stand not for vengeance, but for validation. A mother's plea to reclaim the fragments of a family fractured by fraud, only to learn that some truths, once spoken, splinter the soul beyond repair. Martha Blanchett was the quiet architect of academic aspirations, a Stanford alumna whose life orbited the groves of academe like a devoted satellite. Born in 1952 in Palo Alto's shadow to a professor father and librarian mother, she inhaled the scent of eucalyptus and old books from cradle days, her childhood a procession of campus picnics and library nooks. By 1970, she enrolled at Stanford herself, majoring in economics, her thesis on market ethics a prescient whisper amid Watergate's roar. Graduation in 1974 launched her into consulting, but family pulled her back. Marriage to engineer Tom Blanchett in 1976, their daughter Emily arriving in 1980, son Daniel in 1983, both destined for the farm's hallowed halls. Martha balanced boardrooms and bedtime stories, her $450,000 savings, by the 1990s a testament to thrift. Mutual funds for Emily's tuition, bonds for Daniel's dorm dreams. Philanthropy flowed naturally, donations to Stanford's financial aid, her name etched on a scholarship plaque. But the 90s bull run bred boldness. A colleagues' council in 1995 led to a $300,000 dip into a prestige fund via Bernard Madoff's firm. Jewish ties, Ivy whispers, 9 to 11 yield sand sweat. To Martha, it was legacy leverage. Emily's 2004 matriculation funded by gains. Daniel's 2008 freshman fees floated on phantom floats. The Blanchetts summered in Tahoe, their Palo Alto craftsmen a haven of hybrid teas and harvest suppers. Martha's world a well-tended orchard of optimism. The orchard withered on a frostbitten December eve in 2008, as Martha, 56, and grading Stanford guest lectures from her home office, fielded a call that felled her like autumn's first gale. Madoff, the sage whose strategies supposedly split strikes with surgical grace, shackled in scandal, his $65 billion edifice exposed as elaborate artifice, a Ponzi where principal prop payouts, leaving ledgers light as leaves. Martha's $300,000 had swelled to $520,000 on spurious spreadsheets, but the core cratered, withdrawals of $220,000 from 2005 to 2007, now nooses of negation. The crimes calculus clawed close. Emily, 28 and a Stanford Ph.D. candidate in Lit, her dissertation derailed by deferred loans. Daniel, 25 and fresh from undergrad, his grad school bids balking at the bank's bulk. Tom, stoic till then, sold his vintage Mustang to bridge the breach, but the rift ran rawer. Family dinners dissolved into debt debates, Martha's scholarship pride now a punchline in pitying postcards. The betrayal's bite was bespoke. Madoff's feeder, a Greenwich gateway for academics, had auctioned exclusivity to elites like her, turning collegial confidence into collective carnage. In her torn world, the scar stanched not from sums, but from the severance. A mother's map for her children's ascent, redrawn in red ink, the Stanford seal once a shield now a stain. Scrutineers scoured the scam substrata with the scrutiny of scholars annotating a forgery, each annotation an arrow arcing toward accountability. The FBI's midwinter melee at Madoff's airy avalanched artifacts, archives of artful artifices, 15,000 faux folios fabricating fiscal fables from the 70s. Martha's meridian meandered through premier portfolio, the 800 million sluice whose steward siphoned 30 million in surcharges, scoffing at 2000 SIXS statistical stutters. SEC symposia in 2009's savaged the stasis, 2002's Markopoulos's missive on anomalous alphas, entombed in ennui with 2004's faculty flags. Citations summoned Premier's parchments in 2009's vernal vigor, exhuming epistles of elation. Madoff's metrics, miraculous. Mailed to mandarins like Martha. Capital colloquies combusted, her household's hemorrhage a hue in the 12 billion Premier purge, Solon's slamming the Sentinel snooze. A pivot point perched in 2011. Actuarial autopsies assigning Martha's appropriations as alms for the aggrieved, her 220,000 a quarry for the quest, for the testifier to be, each emanation an emendation, her economics ethos, once a beacon, now besieged by the burrow. As adjutants accumulated, feeders flayed for feints, the thirst throbbed. Would the weaves weft withstand the warp, or would the widow's witness widen the wheel? The lectern of law loomed as a last stand, lecterns laden with the lament of the lost. Madoff's March 2009 abasement, all-encompassing admissions, spectacle spared, spawned sequelae. Premier's potentates paraded in a 2014 Boston bastion, collusion and concealment for corralling capital into conceit. District attorneys draped Martha's martyrdom, mother mangled, her manuscript the measure, coaxing her to the stand, voice veiled but vehement. Apologists appended academic allure, but attorneys arraigned avidity, panel's pronouncement in parleys. Gavel gored, 7 years, 75 million gouge, the granary gaunt. Madoff's June requital, 150 years, abhorrent abomination. Intoned as incantation, clawbacks cascading in 2012 courtesy of Picard's parsimony. Martha mandated to muster her moiety, mortgages menacing the manse. Jolt jars, Premier's 2007 hesitations hushed for halls. Madoff's myrmidons murmurs. For the family, the flail fomented, forms feasting on fortunes. Emily's egress extended, Daniel's deferrals deepened. The scale's symmetry scourged the scrupulous. Her harvest a halting 95,000 by 2017. 32 recouped, the residue a requiem's remnant. Adjudications avenged the affront, but aired the anguish. Rectitude's rigmarole, rigorous yet ruinous, rends the remembrancer as ruthlessly as the rogue. In the scar's subdued suture, Martha mended her milieu with the metal of a mentor unbowed, her testimony a talisman transmuting torment to teaching. She testified in 2014, voice a vessel for the voiceless. Her words, he didn't steal money. He stole mobility. Rippling through reforms, Stanford seminars on stewardship sprouting in her stead. Emily crested her doctorate in 2016, adjunct at UC Berkeley, loans liquidated by lecturing. Daniel dived into data science. His Silicon Valley, start a self-made spire. The craftsman clung, downsized but defiant. Tom's tinkering a therapy. Martha's manuscripts now monographs on moral markets. Reflection rendered in a 2018 op-ed, incisive as her thesis. Fraud fractures not fortunes, but the fatherland we foster for our fledglings. The Madoff maelstrom mirrored her major. Economics equations elude ethics' embrace, and in endowment's enclosure, the testifier's torn world tolls a theorem. Pilferage's progeny persists, but proclamation pioneers the path. Her scars, Stanford stamped, signify that testimony tempers the tempest, forging from the fissure a fellowship fiercer than the frayed. She spoke truth to the throne of thieves, yet the echoes shattered the sanctuary she built for her own. Case 10. The Founder's Faded Hope. Angela Shaw's endless wait for justice. She founded a nonprofit on the promise of second chances, only to watch her family's hard-won inheritance vanish into an offshore abyss, chaining her to a labyrinth of lawsuits where justice dangled like a distant shore. Angela Shaw was the embodiment of quiet resolve, a social entrepreneur whose life bridged the grit of blue-collar roots and the grace of determined reinvention. Born in 1965 in Liverpool to a dockworker father and seamstress mother, she grew up amid the Mersey's fog and factory hum, her childhood marked by hand-me-downs and the echo of strikes. Yet Angela's spark ignited early. Top marks at a local comprehensive, a scholarship to the University of Manchester in 1983 for business studies, where she devoured texts on ethics and enterprise. By 1990, she'd landed in London as a junior consultant, but the 90s recession honed her edge, volunteering at shelters, witnessing how debt drowned dreams. In 2002, at 37, she founded Hope Haven, a UK-based nonprofit aiding ex-offenders with microloans and job training, bootstrapped from £50,000 in family seed money. Her husband, architect Mark Shaw, matched her mettle. Their 1998 marriage yielded daughter Lily in 2001 and son Theo in 2004, the family settling in a terraced home in Islington, where Sunday roasts mingled with strategy sessions. Hope Haven flourished, £2 million in grants by 2010. Angela's TEDx talk on redemption economics, going viral, her profile a blend of boardrooms and backstreets. Financially, she was the prudent planner. £750,000 inheritance from her parents' modest pensions in 2005, diversified into UK gilts, and to sliver abroad for stability. A financial advisor's pitch in 2006 swayed her. £400,000 into an offshore feeder fund via the Channel Islands, tied to Bernard Madoff's flawless model. Tax perks, steady 8 to 10 splits, a haven for nonprofits eyeing global reach. To Angela, it was legacy insurance, funding Hope Haven's expansion, the kids' trusts, a buffer against Britain's fiscal fog. The insurance invalidated on a rain-lashed December morning in 2008. As Angela reviewed grant proposals in Hope Haven's cramped Clerkenwell office, the telex from her advisor slicing through like a nor'easter. Madoff, the Yankee wizard whose yields defied downturns, unmasked in Manhattan, his $65 billion offshore and onshore octopus exposed as a Ponzi predator, devouring deposits to disgorge dividends. Angela's £400,000, laundered through a Jersey-based vehicle, dissolved into the deep. Statements she'd archived as anchors now admitted as anchors away. Madoff's collar concoctions, equity hedges that hid in plain sight, never more than notional nods. The fall flooded fast. Hope Haven's payroll teetered, £150,000 in profits, withdrawn for program pilots, now phantom fodder for clawbacks. The Shaw's Islington idol imperiled by mortgage murmurs. Mark's freelance dried up in the crash's chill. Lily's uni fees at LSE looming like ledgers unbalanced. For Angela, the founder forged in fairness, the fracture festered. Her advisor, a Rotary chum, had hailed Madoff's ethical edge over pints, turning transnational trust into a transnational trap. Offshore opacity amplified the agony. Jersey's vaults veiling the venom, her fight now a ferry across legal straits. In the founder's faded hope, the loss lacerated not liquidity, but the lifeline she'd laced for the least. Ex-con's second act stalled. Her own family's forward march mired in the muck of misbegotten math. Agents abroad and at home assailed the artifice with the tenacity of treaty-bound task forces, each transatlantic transmission tightening the tourniquet on the tangle. The FBI's festive fusillade at Madoff's stateside sanctum spilled secrets seaward, servers surfacing satellite scams, ledgers linking London's losses to Long Island's lies. Angela's artery arced through Palladian Partners, the £300 million Guernsey gateway, whose guardians gorged on £10 million in gratuities, glossing over 2005's yield yawns. SEC and FCA forensics in 2009 flayed the fugue. Marcopolo's 2007 transatlantic tip on offshore oddities, interred in international inboxes, with 2004's EU alerts. Warrants winged to Palladian's Isles in 2009's Equinox, resting writs of willful winks. Madoff's Matrix, multinational marvel, forwarded to founders like Angela. Parliamentary probes and Brussels briefings boiled. Her haven's hemorrhage a harbinger in the £5 billion Palladian plunge, MEPs and MPs mauling the monitor's malaise. A lodestar lit in 2011. Forensic flows flagging Angela's allotments as alibis for absconders. Her £150,000 a lodestone for the levy. For the founder, each dispatch a dirge. Her haven's ethos, exported for equity, now ensnared in the entanglement. As enablers emerged, Jersey jurists jailed for jurisdiction jigs. The intrigue intensified. Would the web's watery wings wilt under waves, or would the widow founder's wail wash the wicked? The docs domain divided duties across datelines, dockets a duet of deliverance and delay. Madoff's March 2009 capitulation, comprehensive counts, cross-examination curtailed, catalyzed cascades, Palladian's paladins pursued in a 2015 Jersey jurisdiction, complicity and concealment for conduit crimes. Crown prosecutors projected Angela's plight, pioneer pillaged, her pleadings the pulse, pressing her for podium presence, her poise a pillar. Pallbearers pleaded paradise protocols, but pursuers pounced on perfidy, jury's judgment in jury junctures. Verdict vexed, 6 years, £40 million fine, the fisc faint. Madoff's June inquest, 150 years, global grotesquerie. Graded as ground base, clawbacks coursing in 2012 via Picard's peripatetic pact. Angela assessed for her appropriation, assets auctioned in arrears. Shutters shook. Palladian's 2006 cautions, cabin for commissions. Madoff's maritime minions marooned. For the family, the furor fruited, filings from afar feathering fees. Hope Haven have to half-staff, Lily's leave lengthened. The balance's bilateral bite buffeted the benevolent, her bounty a belated £120,000 by 2020. 30 lifted, the lag a lamente's legacy. Decrees dispense due, but disclose the deadlock. Rectitude's relay, relentless yet remote, ravages the remote as relentlessly as the roost. In the Hope's hearty harvest, Angela alchemized the arrears into an anthem of advocacy, her endless wait a wellspring for wider wakes. Hope Haven hunkered through 2010's haze on crowdfunding crescendos, rebounding with £1.5 million in reform reserves by 2015. Microloans meted with Madoff-minted mistrust. Her TED follow-up, Justice's Long Tail, trending transcontinentally. Mark's blueprints burgeoned in boutique builds. Lily litigated for low-income litigants post-LSE. Theo tutored teens in trade skills. The Islington abode endured, augmented by allotments. Angela's archipelago of audits armor anew. Rumination rose in a 2022 roundtable, resolute as her roots. Fraud's fog fades slowest offshore. Patience isn't virtue. It's the vice we volunteer for. The Madoff miasma mirrored her mission. Redemption's road, roundabout and rutted, rewards the resolute. And in Legacy's longitudes, the founder's faded hope forecasts fortitude's fine. Pilferages, ports persist, but perseverance pilots the passage. Her saga sings of system sprawl. Theft's tides traverse treaties, yet tenacity turns the tide, transfiguring the trapped into the trailblazers. She sowed seeds of second chances, until the sea of scams swallowed her harvest, leaving only the salt of unfinished fights. What's your take on this story? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, because the next mystery is already ticking. As the credits roll on these 10 tales of shattered trust, one truth lingers like smoke from a smoldering ruin. Ponzi schemes don't just steal money. They pilfer the fragile architecture of our futures, built on handshakes and half-remembered promises. From Nobel laureates to everyday elders, from Hollywood heights to humble inheritances, the victims we met today remind us that greed's greatest illusion is the one we allow ourselves to believe. In the end, justice may claw back fragments, but the scars? They etch deeper than any ledger. If these stories of betrayal and resilience have you questioning the shadows in your own portfolio, hit that subscribe button for the Crime O'Clock, your nightly dispatch into the underbelly of human frailty, where every case unravels a thread of the human condition. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Which victim's story hit hardest, and how do we spot the next Madoff before he strikes? Turn on notifications, because the clock's always ticking toward the next unsolved enigma. Fade to black, but the questions? They echo on,